Okay, good morning, everyone. We're going to start the meeting here. And first, we'll start with a moment of reflection. Thank you. So you can make a disclosure of pecuniary interest now or at any point in time through the meeting. And we have no additions or deletions from the agenda.
No.
So I need a motion to confirm the agenda that was in your package, moved by Councillor Wilhelm, second by Councillor McKenzie. Those in favor? Carried. Consent agenda. We have items 5.1 to 5.9. Minutes from November 4th, 2021. Does anyone want to see anything pulled for discussion? I'm not seeing any hands. Okay, I have a motion that council receives the consent agenda items 5.1 to 5.9 and approves the November 4th, 2021 council minutes, moved by Councillor Kellum, seconded by Councillor Kasenberg. Those in favor, and that would be carried. Perfect. So we're moving on to public meetings, hearings, and delegations. And we have Kate Burns Gallagher coming from Western Ontario Wardens. So when we get her on the screen, we're good. Oh, there she is. Good morning, Kate.
Good morning, Warden Atchison. How are you?
Very good, thank you. We're all ready for your report.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much for having me today, and through you, Warden, to County Council. I'm pleased to be here to present the Western Ontario Workforce Strategy Issues and Findings Report. This report is a culmination of work over this past year into what's been happening in the region and workforce development. So I'm going to attempt to share my screen here, and hopefully we will be okay. And let me know if everything looks good. Oh, I need to get back to the very top though. Let's go here. How does that look? Are you only seeing parts of it?
Yeah, it's a little bigger than what our screen is here.
Okay, I'll stop sharing and maybe ask Sean if you're able to share it.
Yeah, I can. Just give me 1 second. I'll set it up.
Fantastic. Yeah, it's not showing the whole screen, but I'll just get into the thick of it, and then once Sean's able to get it up in the context of time. So for those of you who don't know who the Western Ontario Wardens Caucus is, it is a united front of 15 counties, upper and single tier, spanning from Simcoe County in the northeast all the way down to Essex in the southwest. We represent 20% of the population of Ontario. So we can jump to the next slide there. That'd be great. Perfect. At 300 communities, more than 3 million residents, 500,000 square kilometers, and 90% of that region is rural. Our purpose as a collective is to enhance the prosperity and overall well-being of our rural communities. And we recognize by working together on the big issues, we're able to really have that single voice to enact positive change in our rural communities. We're looking at those high impact projects that affect all 15 counties that we can advocate at the federal and provincial levels. We also have as our partner the Western Ontario Community Futures Development Association, and we are pleased to have them as a financial contributor to our economic development work. We can pop to the next slide. So why did we go into workforce development? We've been recognizing that Western Ontario currently lacks an overarching strategy for workforce development. The situation is made more acutely aware because that growth in the 25 to 55 year age gap, there's not enough growth in the region to meet the job demand need in the next several years. So we reached out to the Ministry of Labour Training and Skills Development, and they are funding this project through the Ontario Labour Market Plan. And this project is looking to proactively attract business immigrants to the region and advocate for improved worker movement between communities. And we're looking to address all of the issues that our employers are facing with workforce to make sure that our rural communities stay vibrant. If we can go to the next slide. So how are we doing this? We engaged an amazing consulting team. And this is the dream team. Aileen Murray of Mellor Murray Consulting is the project lead. David Campbell is our data guru. Lisa Prime is our planner, and Tracy John brings it all together with her amazing marketing and communications. On to our next slide. And our project process. So as I mentioned, we started at the beginning of this year with this project. And over the course of this summer, we were able to engage over 500 people from across the region with 15 community roundtables, one-on-one interviews with industry stakeholders, and a business survey. Today's presentation is really encapsulating what happened in phase 2, so that findings and issues report. But tomorrow, our Economic Development Committee is reviewing our draft attraction strategy. The final final strategy will be available on December 17th. Next slide. So today I'll be presenting you with the demographic trends for Perth County and then the overarching key findings from the whole 15 county region. Next slide. So our population growth for Perth County. Perth County is in a really great position when we look at population growth. It's been on a steady increase in recent years, up 7% over the past 5 years and up 9% over the past 10. And for comparison's sake, if you look at Stratford's population, it's increased 5% over 5 and 7% over 10. So Perth is well positioned in that population growth. Next. And when we look at our municipalities, appreciating that Stratford and St. Mary's are separated cities, you see that North Perth has the highest population growth of your municipalities. And then as the region as a whole, St. Mary's is a close second. And then all of your other municipalities are really close, but all seeing positive population growth. Next. Now, Perth County, unlike a lot of our other member counties, has natural population growth, so where you have more births than deaths, and that is unlike much of Ontario, in fact. By contrast, you see Stratford has more deaths than births, so this is a bonus for Perth County in that you have that natural population growth as well. Next. And then when we look at interprovincial migration, this is where a lot of your population is coming from. So this is people moving around within the province. And this is the primary source of growth for Perth, averaging about 380 people year over year in the past 4 years. And you can see that 2015 was a real TSN turning point for Perth, where people from the rest of the region were starting to migrate in. Prior to that, you were losing about 50 people a year. So 2015, something really good happened for Perth County. Next. And when we look at immigration, I would say Perth is very close to all of your peers, where you have still relatively few immigrants settling in the area, on average about 66 immigrants. So those are people outside the country settling into Perth. Stratford's the same, and many of our member counties are on in that same number range. Next. So what does all this mean for your workforce? Essentially, you are in a really good place. You are attracting population from elsewhere in Ontario, and most of that population is in relative proximity to larger urban centers as well. But increasing workforce retirements will likely require more sustained population growth into the future. Next. So when we look at our MC data and what it tells us for our workforce considerations for Perth, in the last 10 years, total employment increased by 6%. In the next 8 years, so looking forward, it's expected to increase by another 7%. So over the next decade, 6,000 more people are needed for demand, and 2,000 more people are needed for growth demand.
Just popping back up over here.
So that's approximately 50% more new workers are going to be needed compared to the past decade. Next. Perfect. So where are those workers going to be needed? These are the fastest growing sectors in Perth, construction being number 1, manufacturing, finance and insurance, healthcare, and retail trade. Next. So now that we know what's happening in Perth as far as demographics and your fastest growing sectors, this is a look at the key findings from the whole region and what we heard from those roundtables, from the business surveys, and from the one-on-one interviews. Next. So looking at workforce development for the whole 15 county region, total employment is expected to grow by over 51,000. And we couple that with the replacement and growth demand. So those are people retiring and attrition. That's another 213,000 people. So in the next decade, we need to attract 260,000 plus people to Western Ontario. So that's a big, big number. In addition to that, we have employer expectations that are not meeting worker needs. Employers have shifted and they don't necessarily are not necessarily in the power position that they used to be. Our resident skills no longer match employer needs. So we have people that need jobs and employers that need workforce, but the skills aren't matching up. Post-secondary education programming also is not meeting our industry needs. And there's a lot of competition for workers. We see those billboard signs, we see poaching happening, and it's a sad reality of our current workforce situation. And there's also limited awareness to career paths. People don't know the amazing careers in manufacturing or construction, or even in healthcare in many cases. So from workforce demand, we look at the workforce supply side. We see that there's insufficient youth expected to join the workforce to address our demand situation. There's uneven population growth across the Western region. There are fewer immigrants into our region as compared to the rest of the province. Now, as a benefit, we have a greater reliance on,
Sorry to interrupt you. I just want to have to let everybody know the internet has gone down at the courthouse and Paramedics HQ. So we're going to actually have to pause the meeting until they get that back up and running.
Okay.
Sorry about that.
So stop presenting and wait?
Yes, please.
Okay.
Now, the outage was somewhere between Mornington and somewhere else. We are back up and running using some of the EMS equipment actually in a hot spot. So I apologize for the break, but there's nothing we can do about it. That's just IT at its finest. And all the conversations we've had at Western Ontario Wardens, Kate, about better rural internet and stuff. Oh my gosh, does that ring true this morning? Anyway, if you wanted to continue on, that would be great.
Thank you, Warden. So Sean, I think we left off on PowerPoint number 16 or 17. Perfect. Great. Thank you. So yes, as you mentioned, the Western Ontario Wardens Caucus are very strong on broadband there. So quite proof is in the pudding today. But workforce supply. So we left off talking about the temporary foreign workers and how there's a real advantage for our region. We have a lot of temporary foreign workers coming into Western Ontario under agricultural, and there's a real opportunity there to look at the temporary foreign worker program for other sectors, manufacturing, construction, when the skills are matching. There's also a higher share of older people remaining in the workforce, and that's a real opportunity for our region. And looking at the potential for greater participation by underrepresented segments. So how can we get those people that are not working into the workforce? Next. Our key findings also showed us as a region, the top 3 sectors that are in demand are manufacturing with 30,000 jobs, and then by 2030. Healthcare at 28,300, and then agriculture, while at 10,000, the percentage of jobs is high in agriculture with 10,000 coming up. Now, employer recruitment, the key findings there. Housing is a major barrier for our employers, both on the purchase side and on the rental side, and attracting a workforce. We need to broaden our recruitment efforts. A lot of employers need help in looking beyond their local borders to attract a workforce. Few are doing career planning with staff, and that's something that needs to be looked at. Also, that equity, diversity, and inclusion training needs to be considered. Supports for temporary foreign workers when they get here, and supports for the employers and in ways to apply for temporary foreign workers. And last but not least, on employer recruitment, supports for targeted recruitment, drives, community promotion, and youth engagement. So getting those targeted segments of people engaged. Next. Look, when we look to people attraction, talent attraction efforts are really uneven across the region. That we have some counties that are incredibly active in their talent attraction efforts and some that aren't doing anything. So this is something that we can really take a firm stance on in the region, and do some work there. We also need to align our attraction to our employment opportunities. Now we know what our fastest growing sectors are, so now we need to attract people to those sectors. Collaboration with employers is tantamount. We can't do anything in a vacuum, so we need to make sure our employers are walking beside us in all of this. And we need to develop value propositions for our member communities. Why our communities are great places to live, work, and play. We all know it, and now we need to tell everybody out there in the whole world about it. Looking at that post-secondary talent pipeline. So if you look in our work, PSE, that post-secondary education, there are fewer college students and university students in the region compared to the province, but our region is well positioned. We're highly reliant on college educated workers. There's a lot of benefit there because we do have a large number of the colleges in our region. Also a benefit, international student numbers are way up. So look to try and keep those international students in our communities. And mature student numbers are way up. And there's a lot of benefit to having mature students in our regions as well. Next. And housing, you can't have try and attract a workforce without looking at the housing issue. You attract people here, but they need somewhere to live. So we're not looking at these as silos. We're looking at it as a big picture item. And no surprise to any of you, I'm sure, the prices are escalating across the region. High growth areas are particularly challenged to meet the demand. The diversity of housing really needs to address attainability. So not just affordability, but attainability. There are policy tools that need to provide flexible solutions. The province has done some work, but there's a lot more that needs to be done. There's a lack of short-term rental units. We're seeing a lot of people taking out inventory from short-term rentals and putting them into Airbnb. And then a lot of people are also selling to take advantage of the market. There's a real lack of housing types to transition from rental to home ownership. And in all 15 of our county roundtables, NIMBYism was a huge response when we're looking at attainable and affordability. Opportunities for rental matching. So we've seen some really great stories across the province where seniors and students and co-living opportunities, there's people in larger homes with rooms. So how can we take advantage of those vacant rooms in our region? And last but not least, on the housing front, the development industry requires a growing workforce as well. So if we need to build these homes, as some of you may know, Mike Moffitt's Smart Prosperity Institute says the region needs, or the province needs 1 million new homes, but we need people to build them, and we need people to build them, and those people need somewhere to live. So it's this ongoing cycle. Next. So to wrap up our key findings, for our region, small businesses are number one. 96% of the businesses in the region are businesses that are 25 employees or less. And what does that mean? It's less capacity to make change. Most often they do not have dedicated HR resources, and they need help hiring from diverse groups. They need to adopt online recruitment and training and need help doing that. And succession planning is also a critical issue. We want to keep our local businesses. So how do we make sure that there's a succession plan in place? And all those are compounded by rural limitations. So those housing options, there's just not as many housing options in the diversity in our rural areas. Immigration and attraction and retention, as we saw in those demographics, is not as strong in rural. The amenities compared to our urban counterparts, Transportation is a little spotty in some areas, but I know Perth County has a great transportation plan. Broadband, as we saw today, and childcare. The accessibility of childcare is also an issue. Next. But with challenges, there are opportunities, and we have taken all of these issues and findings and put them down into 4 key strategic priorities that will have action items tied to them. So next slide. Our 4 strategic priorities that will have actions tied to them are workforce retention and attraction. So getting the people here and helping them stay. Leveraging our existing population. There are a lot of people in our regions, so let's get them working and finding ways to connect them to our employers. Attainable housing, looking at the breadth of opportunities in attainable housing and working with the province to address the policy issues there. And last but not least, employer recruitment and retention. So really working with the employers on how we can help them recruit and stay in our regions. Next. Oh, we got a blank slide. Maybe. All right. So our next steps, we can just close that out, Sean, and I can just let everybody know our next steps. As I said, Friday, we are reviewing our draft economic development strategy, the workforce strategy with the Economic Development Committee. And by December 17th, we will have a complete strategy with actions in place for the whole region and all of our partners. And we're really excited about that work. We've been working with multiple ministries. Last month, we sat down with 6 different ministries and their senior staff to present these issues and findings. And they are incredibly engaged and wanting to move forward with the Western Ontario Women's Caucus. So we have great engagement at the provincial level, and we're starting to get on the desks of some federal staff as well. So we are hitting the ground running with Roma in January with a lot of this work and findings as well. And with that, I'd just like to thank Warden Aitchison for his guidance, support, and experience in bringing information about Perth to the table. Also, past Warden Mackenzie, who sits on the Economic Development Committee, has been a great wealth of information. And Meredith Forget and Justin Diaz have also been great representatives of Perth County and have really helped develop this workforce strategy. So I present that to you. If you are so inclined, wowc.ca. Under the projects tab, all of the issues and findings report is available there, along with the appendix that has all of that data that was presented earlier for you. Thank you.
Thank you, Kate. Just want to thank you for an excellent report. I thought it was just excellent, great information. If you don't mind, I'll maybe open up the floor for a couple questions if there are any. Any questions from council with regards to this report? Councillor Kazenberg.
Thank you, Mr. Warden. A wonderful report. Thank you very much. You've touched on so many of the important themes that all of us have been living day in, day out in our elected offices, and for the staff as well, who are trying to support and make things happen. I think my primary question today actually is an interesting one related to temporary foreign workers. And I noted that you noted this in your report. I see actually an increased use of various programs, including immigration support and temporary foreign worker efforts. Can you comment on any of your findings about best practices across the region that is covered by the WOWC?
Yeah, so there's actually a pilot project right now in Chatham-Kent, looking at settling newcomers to Chatham-Kent and attracting skilled workers to Chatham-Kent. And I'd be happy to share the information with you on that project. And I know I've personally, with my work previous in Elgin, we worked with a window manufacturer and went through the temporary foreign worker program to bring about 100 folks from the Philippines over, the seasonal workers, to work in the manufacturing. And from my understanding, that was 2.5 years ago, was one of the first times they've actually used the temporary foreign worker program for manufacturing, and it went well. And I think that is an example of how we can really leverage that temporary foreign worker program for other things other than agriculture. But the supports need to be there. It was a really expensive and time-consuming process for the manufacturer, where agriculture has, they have that group set up that helps apply for the application and walks you through all the steps. I think we need to look at a similar system for our manufacturers, construction, any other sectors that need that support as well.
Thank you. I think you hit the nail on the head, and that's what I was getting at is, can there be some kind of coherent platform that will support non-agricultural sectors in their efforts? I don't want to cut out agriculture, but as you say, I think they know that business fairly well, and it's the others who seem to be taking tentative steps but needing support. And so how can we either advocate to other levels of government that they need to simplify this, or bring best practices to the table from across the area so that people can be more efficient and effective in getting that done? Thank you.
Other questions or comments? I don't see any hands up on the screen. Perfect. Well, thank you very much, Kate. It was a great report. Sorry we took up an extra half hour of your time, but something that we just had no control over.
Hey, no, not a problem at all. And I really appreciate the opportunity to come and present. Have a great day.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, so I have a motion that Perth County Council receives the Western Ontario Wardens Caucus presentation. Moved by Councillor McKenzie and second by Councillor Kazenberg. Those in favor? That's carried. Perfect. Thank you, Kate. Anyway, we're moving on. So next we have the Community Engagement Framework report.
Thank you, Warden Aitchison and members of council. I have Sean giving me a hand this morning with some slides. I'll just wait for them to pop up on the screen.
Fortunately, you do not have.
I do not.
So due to the internet
Okay.
issues, the VPN has gone down and we don't have access to the presentation. But if you see about getting
Nope.
the access as well.
That's okay. I can circulate this to council following the presentation and just run through a few of the key points maybe that I had prepared. So once again, thank you for the opportunity to present to you this community engagement framework. You have a copy of the framework document in your council packages, but I just wanted to run through a few items this morning just to highlight at a high level for you some components of this engagement framework. So you may be asking the question, what is community engagement as a whole? And sometimes it's known as public engagement, but we know that it allows municipalities to better understand the needs of the community, first and foremost, but it also opens lines of two-way communication for between the community and stakeholders, as well as staff and council. As much as it's important to understand what community engagement is, it's also important to understand what community engagement is not. And what it also means is that it doesn't necessarily mean that everybody's always going to agree, but it does offer the opportunity for opinions and concerns to be heard so that council and staff can make informed decisions. And those may sometimes be independent of some of the opinions that are heard through community engagement. In terms of the benefits of community engagement, this improves our council and staff decision-making because we're able to consider a broad range of opinions as well as perspectives. This also brings a group of diverse voices to the table and those who may be disproportionately impacted by projects. It also helps to open those lines of communication, allowing us to reduce and eliminate, in some cases, misconceptions or misinformation about projects. And it empowers participants to feel an ownership over what the decisions that are being made. And that involvement really strengthens their interest in municipal work. So I don't have the slide to aid me here, but what you will have seen in the community engagement framework document is that the gold standard for community engagement is a spectrum known as the community engagement spectrum. And this was developed by the International Association for Public Participation, also known as IAP2. And this provides sort of an overarching guideline to move from a level of informing to a level of empowering. And in between, you have consult, involve, and collaborate. And at each one of these stages, there are different components that can be involved. And not every project is going to touch on each one of these levels. Some may use a combination. And we see that already in the work that we do. So through this extensive literature review that you, through the development of this framework for Perth County, really what comes to the forefront as I've done this research is that this is a best practice across many municipalities to have a framework to help to guide us, to help to make sure that we're consistent in our approach. But what it also does is help to support some of the findings from some recent public engagement that's happened in our own community. So our community safety and well-being plan that was put forward in 2021, our diversity, inclusion, and anti-racism charter, our corporate strategic plan, as well as our corporate communications plan, all reference that the community is interested in learning the work that we do, and we can work hard and be consistent toward community engagement and informing the public of the projects that we have on our work plans. So on the ground for our staff and for council, this community engagement framework means a few things. It's a new project planning tool that helps us to assess the scale and level of community engagement through all of our projects. This also helps to increase collaborative efforts across different divisions of the county. So just as an example, a project may have legislative requirements or statutory requirements, in which case legislative services would be a great resource. Or we want to make sure we're taking into consideration accessibility requirements if we're hosting in-person public engagement, or even in this age of digital documents, making sure that they're accessible. Depending on the scale and scope of a project, it could involve technology services, understanding what platforms we need and what we have on hand to achieve the outcomes that we're looking for. Involving financial services to make sure that the financial impact is understood, whether that's impacting the time or the resources and staff requirements to complete a project. And of course, communications, as the inform level will probably be the most commonly used, communications will play a key role in making sure that information is delivered out to the public. So by having this project planning tool and increasing that collaboration, we really end up with a whole picture of what the project ends up looking like. It will also help with post-project reporting. So sort of closing that loop and making sure that we are capturing the metrics on our community engagement and making sure we're achieving the goals that we had set out to achieve, which will also help members of council and staff to understand the impact of the project. The interesting thing that can happen along the way, though, often with community engagement is you may find some other interesting aspects that you weren't aware of at the time that can also help to inform future work that may fall outside the scope of the original project. So I won't go into too much detail on the kind of the whole quick reference checklist that was developed, but it is in the appendix, and that's probably going to be the component that you'll see staff use the most. This really walks our staff through each step of the project planning process, from identifying the issues and the goals for community engagement to planning that community engagement process and looking really a 360-degree view of the project to determine which departments and divisions need to be involved at the outset. And of course, actually executing the community engagement plan, but also tracking and evaluating and reporting after the fact to make sure that we are not only tracking that information for ourselves and for the purposes of the project that we're engaging in, but also closing the loop and communicating out to the public so they understand that their input was valued and they understand exactly how that input informed those decisions. Also included in the toolkit is a list of types of community engagement activities that fall under each of the levels of public participation. As well, I've also included some information about metrics that can be tracked. So, understanding that community engagement may not be everybody's second nature, it really provides a resource and tool to help staff brainstorm the types of activities they may want to undertake as they're executing their project. So, in closing, I guess I would say that this tool will really help us be deliberate in our community engagement. It will help us to be consistent in our community engagement efforts and allow our residents, our stakeholders, our community groups understand the work that we do and have a level of involvement in that process. So thank you very much for your time and bearing with me without the presentation up on the screen. And I'd be happy to take any questions you may have about the framework.
Thank you, Sarah. Questions on the framework? I see Councillor Katzenberg got his hand up.
Thank you very much, Mr. Warden and Sarah. I as one who occasionally gets to work in his own communications business, but increasingly not so much because of elected official responsibilities, I want to tell you this is brilliant. And I really appreciate the work that's been done here. It is sensible, it is practical. There is so much to commend here. My highest compliments on this work. I do want to sort of ask, maybe it's an odd question, but there are times when staff and council may have differing objectives with regards to community engagement. And I'm just sort of wondering, when I looked at sort of the role of council, it talks about sort of, encouraging staff to look through this lens and stuff. But I'm wondering if we don't need to be a little bit more deliberative about that particular angle, that perhaps it's important for council, especially for crucial kinds of projects and initiatives, to understand and to communicate desires about its intent for engagement with a bias towards more versus less, if that makes sense. Can you sort of muse about that for me, if you will?
Absolutely. Thank you, Councillor Katzenberg. Through the warden. I included a section regarding kind of special circumstances when it comes to community engagement. And I think if I'm understanding what you're describing, really falls under sort of those circumstances where perhaps an issue may be contentious or, on the ground in the community, council members may be aware of a public opinion that may require some beefed up community engagement, just some additional steps. And I think, while this framework lays out really a path for a basic level of community engagement as you're walking through your project planning, I think you're quite right that there is opportunity for staff and council to raise those issues and determine what tactics or what processes may help to mitigate or enhance the community engagement process. So I'm just thinking, for example, where in a situation, perhaps a survey or some online engagement may be appropriate, but if there was a particularly difficult circumstance around the project or concerns about people being disproportionately impacted, then it may be worthwhile hosting an in-person open house or some form of a question and answer period. And in some cases where council members are aware of a localized issue, I would say that would be something where project planning would inform some sort of level of communications work. So that could be developing a brochure or a pamphlet that's actually handed out to answer some of those common questions to make sure that that everybody feels like they have the correct information and allowing council members to be informed and have those tools when they're out in the public to speak to the issues.
Councillor Katzenberg.
One more. Thank you. Excellent thinking there. I appreciate that. I think the sort of other point that I'd kind of raise is that, as you know, in many of the reports to council that we receive from staff, there's a, sort of a couple of lenses that are applied, financial and statutory in some cases. I'm wondering, even though it may not be as practical for communication and community engagement aspects to be in our reports, I'm hoping a lens that will be routinely applied. And I think that's the beauty of the framework that you've created, is that there's an opportunity for staff, especially, to be looking at every issue in every report and saying, what is, like, how do we look at this through the communication and engagement lens, right? So I'm just sort of encouraging the possibility that there may be times where reports come to council and we actually do talk about the community engagement lens in the report.
Yeah, absolutely. Through the warden. In fact, as a next step to this, following the hopeful approval of the community engagement framework, the goal would be to develop a standard operating procedure. And one of the items up for discussion would be to have that community engagement implication at the base of the council report. So it's sort of a component that's considered as we're putting those reports forward.
Okay, other questions? Other councillors? Not seeing any hands go up. I have a motion that Perth County Council receives the Perth County Community Engagement Framework Report and that council approve the Community Engagement Framework for use by staff and council as part of the project planning process and direct corporate communications to develop an accompanying policy and procedures. Moved by Councillor Kassenberg, seconded by, everybody raise the Councillor McDermott. Last chance for questions or comments. Those in favor? It's carried. Very good. Okay, so we're going to move on, and I got to ask this question. We're moving on to ECDEV, and our next is the PC Connect report. Is Maggie able to get on?
We should be able to move Maggie over. She should be able to shortly.
Seeing as we're kind of patchwork here.
We're doing okay.
Yeah, we are doing okay.
So maybe should be coming on shortly.
Oh, I see your name coming up there. Morning, Maggie.
Good morning. Can
We're ready
everyone
for your
see and hear me
report.
okay?
Yep, we're good.
Awesome. I'm just on my cell phone here. We should be good. Awesome. So through the warden, thank you so much for your time this morning. As always, just providing a very brief update report regarding our October operations for PC Connect. So everything is pretty much business as usual the past month. However, I did just want to raise and speak to the delays that we've been facing in regards to our app launch. So the app provider that was awarded through our RFP process earlier in July has actually recently advised us that they'll be terminating our contract due to the inability to meet our needs as a fixed route service. So although no costs have been incurred, the delay cause is certainly unfortunate and disappointing. So in accordance to our purchasing policy, we are now working to secure a new app provider, and we hope to have one available as soon as possible. So through initial conversations with a few other potential providers who are experts in a fixed route service, we are hopeful that we'll be able to have an app available within the next few months. So other than that, as I mentioned, PC Connect has been business as usual. So I will leave my update at that. And with that, the report is before you, and I welcome any questions that you may have.
Thank you, Maggie. Any questions for Maggie with regards to the transportation report? Not seeing any. I have a motion. Perth County Council receives the PC Connect October update report. Moved by Councillor Callum, seconded by Councillor or Deputy Warden Eggets. Those in favor? That's carried. Thank you very much, Maggie. Okay, so we're
Great,
moving on to
thank you. Have a
corporate
great day.
services. not trying to get too pushy, but we kind of get running behind here, so I'm trying to move this up as fast as we can. Corporate services, record management policy.
Perfect. So Lauren, myself, and Sean, I'll take that. Unfortunately for Sarah, we didn't have the VPN working, but we do now. So our presentation will be showing. Sorry.
Still 5-star.
Yeah. So before council today is our records, corporate records management policy. Sean, if you could go to the next slide, that'd be great. So I'm going to run through a little bit of the background and then hand it over to Sean for a couple of the slides as well. Back in 2017, we had a tab review done on the records management program. And then two of the major governance documents recommendations that came from that were the review of the updated retention schedule, which occurred in 2019 prior to my arrival. And something to be mentioned there is, as well as Sean's done a lot of work on this project. We wouldn't be where we are today without his work. So I do want to mention that and highlight that as well. And the second portion of this is to develop the corporate policy, which is in front of council today. So I'm going to hand it over to Sean to go through a little bit of the two pillars as it respects to the corporate records management program.
Thank you, Tyler. And just through the word into council, the county's records management program is basically supported by a foundation consisting of what we're calling two pillars. And these pillars represent the governance structure that underpins basically every aspect of the records management program. The first pillar that you see circled here relates to records retention. And so this creates the framework for records classification, as well as dictating how long records under each classification category are kept, and also how they're disposed of. So whether they're things that we destroy, or are they permanent records, and then we would send them to archives. The second pillar here relates to records operations. So this is what we do as a corporation to ensure our records are managed in a way that they are accessible, reliable, and authentic throughout their life cycle, regardless of their format. And so the importance of having good foundational documents to govern the records management program is twofold. So it documents how our program operates and also provides guidelines for measures against which we can audit the performance of the program. And so this is really vital for ensuring the long-term viability of the county's records as reliable and authentic documentary evidence. So the requirements of the first pillar were essentially satisfied in 2019 with a comprehensive review and updating of the county's retention bylaw. As you can see here, this was bylaw number 3697, 2019. This was, I think, passed in the first quarter of 2019. So a lot of work in 2018 was done to review the retention schedule and classification scheme with each of the divisions and determine which aspects of the classification scheme apply to those divisions, and then reviewing the retention schedule of those classification categories with management and staff to make sure that what's represented in our retention schedule matches our needs as an organization. And so this is we receive updates annually from the information professionals. It's based off of the Ontario Municipal Records Management System, which is known throughout most municipalities as TOMRIMS, which you may hear pronounced differently depending on who you're talking to. And we receive annual updates from Information Pros, and these are integrated into our document on an annual basis. The last few years haven't really impacted our actual retention schedule in any significant way, which is why you haven't seen any updates brought before you recently. So the requirements of the second pillar will be accomplished with the adoption of the corporate records management policy. And so this policy has been in development basically since 2018, and it applies to the management of the county's records throughout their life cycle, regardless of whether those records are physical records like paper or electronic records, for instance, say a PDF document of maybe the slideshow. So research for the policy included reviews of previous draft policies that were developed here at the county, as well as policies from other municipalities and applicable legislation, as well as industry standards and guidelines. And those are outlined in the report. Overall, the policy defines and documents the scope of the records management program, associated roles and responsibilities, and operational requirements to ensure that records are kept in a manner that supports reliable and appropriate access, preservation, and disposition. And this document is an essential component for the corporate governance of the records program and will support staff as they carry out their duties in relation to the records program, as well as provide measures for auditing and evaluating its performance. And also the policy is a crucial component for supporting the next step that we're going to be carrying out in the next little while for the records management program. And Tyler will go into those. So I'll pass it back to him.
Perfect. Thanks, Sean. So the next steps, 2020 and beyond, what we're looking at is once we have a policy in place, as well as the record retention bylaw, we've really set the foundation for a records management program. So what we'll be looking at next is completing the final versions of any of our standard operating procedures, as well as a basic manual that we put out to the corporation. This manual will guide the development and implementation for staff training. So we'll actually have two documents set up. One will be a very comprehensive manual, and the other one will be kind of a Coles Notes version of it to, again, kind of help facilitate the training portion of the program. We'll be looking at a strategic corporate phasing of our record retention repository software file hold. So what we're looking at right now is the implementation of bylaws, minutes, agendas, and that will be the first phase in of file hold for the corporation, as well as agreements too. This will then help with transparency for the public, because there will be a public portion of file hold that they'll be able to access to obtain any of our past bylaws, minutes, dating back. We've already got scanned in there right now to 2008. So it's really a nice repository that we've already built up in that section. And then finally, with the full records management program, we're going to complete the integration of the digital records as well as the physical records. So file hold is our repository system for both of those, the digital records as well as the physical records, space for us to manage the records. So that's the next steps that we're looking at for the records management program. It has been in development for a bit, but this is the next crucial piece to making a robust records management program for the county of Perth.
Okay, thank you, Sean and Tyler. Questions for either Sean or Tyler on this report? Okay, I'm not seeing any hands go up. I have a motion here. Perth County Council receives the Corporate Records Management Policy Report for information, and Perth County Council adopt the Corporate Records Management Policy as contained in Schedule A. Moved by Councillor McDermott, second by Councillor Wilhelm. Those in favor? That is carried. Perfect. Next report is Legal and Corporate Services update, and that would be Annette.
Thank you. Good morning. A few highlights with respect to life in corporate services over the past month. The Allwood Memorial Project, Stratford Perth Archives helped launch the newest phase of this program by introducing a new website, and it has photos and videos. We've received an incredible amount of feedback, very positive feedback, 10 out of 10 ratings. So I encourage you to go online and to check it out. And I'd just like to take a brief moment to acknowledge Betty Jo and her team in archives, as well as Sarah Franklin and Randy Heidema, who just left the room, to congratulate them on the tremendous amount of work that they've done towards this phenomenal project. I'd also like to give a shout out to Gary White, our GIS coordinator. This past month, he launched the first Ask Me Anything GIS training session with Perth East. So those sessions will be offered to the other local municipalities in the next few months. And for finance, the county submitted 2 applications for municipal modernization grants, one for digital records management and the other for community emergency management. A few updates for court services. The Regional Senior Justice has not yet approved in-person appearances, so we're not certain when they will resume. For finance, our treasurer continues to engage with MPAC to answer the additional questions which were previously raised by council. You'll also see a notation in the report regarding the audited financial statements. We did not have those statements in time to bring forward for this council meeting, but Corey will bring that item forward for the next council meeting. Accessibility. There's two reports coming down the pipe. The first is the annual accessibility update report from the county, and the lower tiers have all been contacted. The information received will be compiled, and that report should be circulated in early 2022. The second report is the accessibility compliance report, and this is a separate report. It's filed every 2 years, and Legislative Services hosted a meeting with the lower tier clerks to offer their assistance. Also, for the Cultivating Opportunity Grant, the county received one application, which will be brought forward as part of the budget. For professional development, our staff continue to be involved in opportunities to represent the county and to network on its behalf. The manager of Archive Services, Betty Jo Belton, she attended the AGM for the Ontario Municipal Archivists Interest Group and the Archives Association of Ontario's Institutional Development Symposium. And Linda Becker, the manager of Court Services, and Danette Lecomte, one of our Court Services clerk. They attended the Municipal Court Managers Association of Ontario conference. And Linda also facilitated a discussion on the Bill 177 reforms as it relates to extension applications and fail to respond dockets. So what's coming down the pipe for next month? Again, more of those Ask Me Anything sessions, the two accessibility reports that I mentioned, the warden's election, and the 2022 budget. So with that, I'm open to any questions you may have.
Questions for Annette from council? Councillor Kassenberg.
Just a small concern, Annette. I have in the last couple of weeks attempted to use the county's map function on its website, the GIS link. And I find that it generates a significant error when it loads, and I've done this on several occasions, including today, that indicates that it is having some difficulty loading map services. So I'm concerned that we're not delivering great service there with this error, and I'm wondering if this is a known problem for the staff at this point, or whether this is new information to you.
Through the warden, this is new information to me, and I actually encourage you to reach out and send me as much information as possible so that I can get an answer for you and we can look into it.
Thank you.
I haven't had any of our per South handbook, but staff mentioned there was an issue like that, but that's not saying there isn't. Could well be. Okay, any other questions for Annette? Or comments? Not seeing any. I have a motion. Perth County Council receives the Legal/Corporate Services October update report. Moved by Councillor Ehrlich, seconded by Councillor McDermott. Last chance for questions. Those in favor? That's carried. Perfect. Next, we're moving on to Paramedic Services. And we need to bring in Mike. Stretch.
Okay.
You want to say anything to start here?
I will, yeah.
I'll skip that. Just keep your way staying on top of you.
Yeah, not stretch across. There we go. We're ready to go?
Yep, we're good.
Awesome, great. So through the warden, today we take pause to recognize an extraordinary story. This is a good news story that symbolizes the work that paramedics do each day within Perth County, St. Mary's and Stratford. As chief, I could not be more proud of the staff involved in the care of Mike Rouse, commander of Perth County Paramedic Service. Early one morning, 911 call was routed to the London Central Ambulance Communications Center. The call taker's quick actions led to the immediate dispatch of our paramedic services. Immediately, Samer Sehe and Randy Bosma, commander and paramedic, jumped into action. They arrived on scene. They knew that the call was for a colleague. A few minutes later, Mike, awake with paramedics, feared most what was a cardiac arrest. A few minutes later, Mike was awake and talking to the two paramedics who saved his life. Mike's journey did not stop there. He subsequently was treated at Listowel Wingham Hospitals Alliance and then at St. Mary's Hospital in Kitchener. Mike is now recovering at home and is celebrating with us here today in person. This is a story where not just these two paramedics would be recognized. It takes a broader team and a community to save a life. I'd also like to recognize paramedics, commanders, administration staff, trainers, county mechanics, members of the peer support team, community paramedics, and through the collaboration with local health organizations, allied emergency services, and also our county council and other partner municipalities. You are all part of this team and part of this story. I turn this over now to Warden Aitchison to present a commendation to the two individuals who saved our commander, Mike Rouse's life.
Thank you, Mike. And we have different people here other than just looking to say persons. We got some heroes in the room, two for sure, and one standing between them that's really, I'm sure, grateful. And his wife is actually sitting over here. And it's great that the job you people do for the county of Perth. I've said it before, and I'm going to say it again. You do things that I wouldn't want to do, and I commend you highly. That you are true heroes to the community. So, as warden, I'm very honest to, on behalf of Perth County Council as well, to issue this letter of commendation to Samer Sehe for your exemplary work and life-saving actions. And we thank you for your hard work and dedication during these difficult circumstances. And we have a plaque here we have done up. I hand it over, and I'll give this to.
Did you want to take a photo? Yeah, exactly.
And also we have Randy Bosma with us here, and he's our other hero. So as warden, I'm very honored to present Randy Bosma this letter of commendation for your exemplary work. And thank you for all your hard work and dedication, not just for this, but through everything, through COVID and everything else. Thank you very much. I'd love to shake your hand, but we're not supposed to do that anymore. And I'm really glad you're here. Chain of command and through, there's a kind of a chain through everything to make everybody survive, and this is an exact perfect example of it.
Jim, do you want to step in the photo or?
Please do.
Where do you want me to go?
Right there.
Right there, yeah, that works.
I had to take my mask down a bit because my glasses are fogging up.
Smile, everyone.
I can see it.
With your eyes, with your eyes. Yeah, you don't see the twinkle.
Oh, yeah, there it is. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen. Greatly appreciated.
Thank you. We have a few more presentations from Paramedic Services, so I guess everyone can recess out the door there and for those that are being presenting that we'll hear on in a second.
And for you people on screen, you don't realize we got Mr. Mike Gilpin with us today.
Good to see you. I see everyone. It's great.
Good to see you.
And also, for the first time since January 2020, we actually had a reporter in the room. And for those of you who didn't recognize Galen with longer hair and beard, that was Galen Simmons. Anyway, we're going to move on. And next on the agenda is tiered response agreement.
All right.
I have a motion first.
Oh,
The Perth County Council receives the Ordnance Accommodation Perth Employee Life Saved Report. Moved by Councillor Kellum, second by Councillor McKenzie. Those in favor? Carried. Now we're moving on. Sorry.
thank you, and through the warden, and thank you for doing that. Didn't know I'd be a little emotional there, but it's all good.
And just before I let you start any further, Mike approached me a month ago, our director of EMS, and thought we should do something, which I agreed. This has all been Mike and his department's doing. So thank you.
Okay, so the next report, thank you, Warden, and through the warden, the next report is on our tiered response agreement, fire and paramedic services. And we have a requirement contractually to review our tier response agreements with our lower tier municipalities that we work with on every 4-year basis, so every sitting of council. And we are going to do that in 2022 with our area fire services. And that will enable us to meet the requirement of that. And it will also give us an opportunity to assess where we're at and see if there's any recommendations that we can bring forward to the lower tier municipalities with respect to the service levels and tiered response. So something to bring to your awareness today. There are some guiding principles in this report that you would have seen, and the guiding principles that I will live by in terms of sitting down with our local area fire services to lead the way by example through collaboration. I think it's super important for us to always consider the patient needs, the outcomes of patients, patient satisfaction, so customer service, as well as public safety and community risk when we're making our decisions and recommendations. Also going to have a look at informed decision making by science, through science, as well as access our base hospital physician, who's also our community paramedic physician who provides us with medical oversight. We also want to consider patient privacy. We want to consider standardizing approaches where possible. That's part of one of our goals in Perth County as well. And then also to consider the service levels as approved by each of our partner municipalities, the lower tiers, what service level they are able to provide and understand what is important to each of those individual municipalities. We're going to consider resources required during specialized rescue situations, and also what support we might be able to provide fire services while on scene at a fire. For example, rehabilitation would be one of those types of things for firefighters when they're actively fighting a fire at a structure or something like that. And then finally, we're going to inquire about the system of sharing. We support many of our fire service partners with some medical equipment and we wanted to take a look at what medical equipment we are sharing and is that working, or are there any areas for improvement? Those are the key guiding principles, and that will happen in a series of meetings during early 2022 so that we can bring recommendations back to this council and also to the other area local lower tier municipalities. So with that, if you have any questions with respect to this report, I'm happy to answer them through the warden.
Thank you, Mike. Questions for Mike on that report? Counselor Hurlick, I think your hand's up there.
Yeah, no, great report. I really enjoy this, and it's so important we have this collaboration. We continually monitoring what needs to be done. Another thing here we always keep in mind here is the electrical car movement and how risk behind electrical fires and related. And it's just really interesting. So no, I just bring that in there and go from there. And yeah, we'll go from there. I'm hearing some heavy echo there. I'm not sure what's going on.
So are we. Actually, other questions for Mike on this report? Don't see any hands going up. I have a motion here. Perth County Council receives the tiered response agreement fire and paramedic service review 2021, 2022 report for information. Moved by Councillor Wilhelm, seconded by Councillor Ait. Those in favor? That is carried. So we're going to move on now to the mobile integrated health update. And with us, we have Chris Kaiser, our Deputy Chief of the Program Development. So take it away.
Through the warden to council, thanks for having me here today to give you a yearly update on our MIH activities and how our program has evolved since we started in March of 2020. So this year was really, I'll just tell you a story. You all have the report available to you to receive. But I'll tell you a story about our program this year. So we really repivoted and took what we learned last year to, can everybody hear me okay? Okay. To really have a look and see how we could better support the community and integrate ourselves into the healthcare system here in Perth County and kind of identify some gaps. We did a number of different things, including increasing training for medics on special populations, as well as partnering with different providers and healthcare services in the county in order to give better services to people. Our focus really was to help people come out of COVID, get back to work, get back on their feet, get connected with healthcare physicians, as well as healthcare providers. So, you know, we provided upwards of around 200 COVID vaccinations to those who needed to get COVID vaccinations and were isolated at home and couldn't get access to that. We also helped test upwards of 100 individuals, I think it was 140, with COVID point of care testing to get them back out of their homes, get their families back into school and back into work. We also did upwards of about 30 to 40 visits a week or a day. Well, yeah, 30 to 40 visits a week with people who were isolated and left in their homes and didn't have access to healthcare through whether they were on long-term care wait lists, discharged from the emerge department, and needed some support before home and community care could get in there and actually provide them with regular care. And so we also continued to learn and grow. And so we've recognized a number of different gaps, and we've moved our education towards providing our mobile integrated health team with the tools they need to help people get connected faster. One of those is mental health. I know that's a priority for all of us in our communities. And so we've been working with a contract provider to actually provide our team with some training and education on how to speed up different assessments to help them get the care they need a lot faster through the normal channels. We've also looked at some different opportunities in falls prevention. We have a lot of people falling at home. And we continue to grow on all fronts as far as that goes. So with that, I know you guys are behind. So I'll give you that. I'll leave you with the report. And I open it up to through the warden. Any questions that you have for me?
Okay, great report. Questions from council? It must have been a really good report. It looks like you're going to get off pretty easy. Okay, so I have a motion. Perth County Council receives the Mobile Integrated Health Update 2021 report. Moved by Councillor Kasenberg, second by Councillor Wilhelm. Those in favor? Carried. Thank you. And now we're going to move on to the Paramedicine Report.
Thank you, through the warden, and we'll finish up with this report with Paramedic Services today. So this report is with respect to, this report was written after Deputy Keyser wrote his report and was regarding the announcement and what was firmed up regarding the long-term care program funding that's available to Perth County. So on November 5th, we received an email from the long-term care ministry indicating that they had earmarked up to $5 million for the provision of mobile integrated health community paramedicine in Perth County. This would be to be spent over essentially as $2 million a year, but the first year, which would be half a year because it's now to the end of the provincial fiscal, would be at $1 million, up to $1 million. That doesn't mean that we're going to receive that much money. It does mean that we can apply for up to that much money. So what we would like to do and what we're here today with a recommendation of action is to move forward with an application which is due on December the 6th, and subsequently, if approved, receive any of those funds to apply to our mobile integrated health program that Deputy Keyser just updated us on. And that would be a significant investment into the program and into what we are doing in the county in terms of supporting all of our citizens that live within our area. So this is a true, this is an excellent gift to the program, and we're excited to bring this for you today for your decision.
Okay, thanks, Mike. Questions for Mike or even Chris, because it involves both? Not seeing any hands go up. I have a motion here. Perth County Council receives the Community Paramedicine for Long-Term Care Program funding in Perth County / $5 million report, and the Perth County Council directs staff to apply to the CPLTC program to receive provincial funding to be applied to the PCPS MIH program.
So many acronyms.
Yeah, I know. But that's basically Perth County Paramedic Service Mobile Integrated Health Program in a nutshell.
Spot on.
Okay, do I have a mover and a seconder? Councillor Duncan, seconded by Councillor Kazenberg. Those in favor? That's carried. And that is actually, we got that email. You said November 5th. There was a lot of people doing some jumping up and down with joy.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Including me.
Yeah, that's right.
It's exciting.
Anyway, it's actually great news. We had tried actually earlier in the year to perhaps get into some of that, and then they said they were going to assess it, but we got in this time, so we're good to go. Okay, so now we're moving on to Public Works, lineal traffic marking, and is Bill able to get on?
Hoping so. Or else I'm winging it.
I got to ask this question now because normally that's not an issue, but today it has been a bit of one. So thanks, Chris and Mike.
Thank you.
It's our pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Okay, there he is. Bill, how are you this morning?
I'm doing well, thank you.
We're ready for your report.
Okay, thank you, Warden Aitchison and members of council. This report is with regards to our traffic marking, our line painting. I'll just walk you through it briefly, and John and I will be able to answer any questions that you may have on it. So earlier in 2021, we issued a tender for the contracted services to look after our lineal line painting throughout the county, as well as some of our local municipalities. At the time, we had 4 submissions, and the low bid was Provincial Road Marking. They performed all the duties of the contract as expected. Everything went actually really well. And within that tender, we had included a provision that we would look to negotiate a contract extension dependent on the works that was completed under the original contract. So we have received a proposal from Provincial Road Marking to extend the contract into 2022, as well as subsequent 1-year extensions out to 2026. Of note, and I'm sure that you, if you had a chance to read the report, have seen that there is a price increase in the unit rates. This was something that John and I were unfortunately expecting. Throughout the paint industry, with regard to line painting, there has been a number of challenges over the last year. A lot of them have to relate with the supply issues that were created back earlier in 2021 when there was that ice storm, winter conditions down in Houston. It really disrupted the market and the supply. So over the course of the last few months, we have received notification from a number of vendors and paint manufacturers stating that there will be price increases, and this is reflected in the pricing that we've received from Provincial Road Marking. So the proposed unit rates are $6.60 for yellow and $6.30 for white paint. That's roughly $2 a liter more than what we were paying in under the contract for 2021's work. Just want to note that those proposed rates are still less than the second lowest bids that were received when we did tender this earlier on in the year. So we think that they're fair, but they are. It is an increase to the budget, and it's probably going to net out to be around a $75,000 increase to what we had budgeted for in 2021. If there's any questions at this time, I'm available, and so is John.
Okay, thanks, Bill. Questions? I see Councillor Hurlick's hands up.
Yeah, no, good, thanks. No, I heard that as well, actually, in the paint industry. There's a pile of chemical got destroyed down in Houston, and it's really put a jam on and made a mess of this. But no, the quality seems excellent by this company. And, you know, as council, we always struggle which way to turn, you know, and we always got to be looking. And here's an instance where, you know, it's been very beneficial from what Bill was alluding and saying here, that we always got to be looking on the outside too, and looking to see specialists do shit. I mean, we really see it in the paramedic business too, you know. Us as company, we just can't do everything, whether it's getting work done or management. And I'm glad we looked at this, you know, to see who's out there and who's doing what, and new technologies, and they just got that edge, really, you know, what they're doing. It's good. Thank you for this report.
Other questions for Bill? Comments? I can't believe the price is going up. Nothing else is. Okay, I have a motion here. Perth County Council receives the lineal traffic marking / contract extension report for information. And the Perth County Council approved the 2022 unit rates for the supply and application of yellow lineal traffic markings at $6.60 per liter for yellow and $6.30 per liter for white markings. And the Perth County Council approved bylaw number 3843/2021, being a bylaw to authorize the entering into and execution of an agreement between the Corporation of the County of Perth and Provincial Road Markings, Inc. for the supply and application of lineal traffic markings. Moved by Councillor McKenzie, seconded by Deputy Warden Eggets. Those in favor? Carried. Thank you very much. Thanks, Bill.
Thank you.
Okay, council reports. Do we have anything under council reports? Nothing. I have a bylaw here, number 3843-2021. You read a first, second, and third time and finally passed the 18th day of November 2021, and that is the one that just deals with what we just discussed. I need a mover and a seconder. Moved by Councillor Duncan, second by Councillor Wilhelm. Those in favor? And that is carried. Notice of motions. Don't see any other business. See any hands go up? Announcements? Not seeing any hands go up. Okay, so next we have closed session. So I need a motion that Perth County Council move into closed session at 10:59 in accordance with section 239 of the Municipal Act as amended to consider a matter pertaining to security of municipal property / negotiations regarding public works. Moved by Councillor McDermott, second by Councillor Wilhelm. Those in favor? That's carried. So we're moving into closed session and okay, we're good to go. I have bylaw number 38442021, being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of council of the corporation of the county of Perth at its regular meeting held November 18th, 2021 is read a first, second, and third time and finally passed November 18th in 2021. Moved by Councillor Duncan, second by Councillor McDermott. Those in favor? And I need a motion to adjourn at 11:28. Moved by Councillor Hurley, seconded by Councillor McDermott. Those in favor? Thank you. It's carried. And thank you for your indulgence today. We did have some technical difficulties, but unavoidable.